Hi, it's Gil Robles. I'm back and I am doing something different this time. Instead of doing a portrait like I usually do, I am doing a landscape and I'm doing it in Rebelle using the watercolor brush here. This is as a response to someone who had asked that I do a demonstration of a landscape in the Rebelle watercolor brush. Because someone was interested in using it for I guess animation backgrounds and so forth, and wanted that look of that old I guess retro animation or whatever, where they painted the backgrounds like these watercolors and so forth. So anyway, that's what I'm doing this here for, and I'm just playing around with it, having fun, and doing this watercolor. Now, it's not what I usually do, but might as well give it a go, because it's not like I don't do landscapes. So here it is. What I'm just doing is this. I'm not trying to overdraw, because I'm a paint over everything, and maybe I did do a little overdrawing on this tree, which it should have been more of a skeleton like you see the landscape is, because I just need a suggestion of what I'm going to do with it. I don't need to draw the whole thing out, but I guess I wanted to get something more or less concrete on the tree. Maybe I needed a bigger idea of what it is I wanted to do there, but and then also for the design of the thing, I'm trying to do it so, like, you're entering a path and you can walk right into the picture. And another thing is doing the back. I'm keeping everything on separate layers. The background is on a separate layer. When I paint the tree is going to be painted on a separate layer. And so what I'm doing here is I'm putting in the background, and I'm trying to make go for that effect where the watercolor disperses and so forth. It's not doing everything what I want here, but that's fine, because I can use the blend tool and push this along a little bit further to where I want it to go, just to give a rough indication of the clouds and stuff like that, and just to suggest it here and there, and that's it, and to prepare the background. So that's it. Now I have the background, and I can continue to paint the tree on top of that. And like I said, I keep the tree in a separate layer, and I'm working out the thing about that's complicated about the tree is all the branches and stuff like that. So that's probably now I'm doing this in hindsight. I mean, I'm recording my audio like I always do after the fact, after I've done the painting. So this was painting done about a week ago, or maybe a little bit more, and I'm finally getting to do the audio. So I'm trying to remember exactly the decisions that I've made, and I believe here I just wanted to emphasize the shadows on the tree, and also begin to let it drip a little here and there, as far as the color is concerned. You want to call this paint, but it's really not paint. But it behaves a lot like a watercolor. So I just indicate the dark areas of the tree, because I want to make the tree as simple as possible. It's already got all these branches and stuff, and that's already going to be a lot to draw and a lot to put in. But it's not. But the main thing is the trunk of the tree. So I want to make sure that when I put that in there, I design it well. I'm using reference, but at the same time, I'm not staying close to the reference at all. I'm using several photographs to put this thing together, and and also using more than a little bit of my imagination just to get what I want for this painting, which is probably how I imagine that someone might do it for do such a thing for a background, as a in an animation or something. So anyway, that's I want to point out, as you see on the layers palette, there's a little blue on one of the icons. It's highlighted in blue on the top of the layers palette, and what it is that I pause the what do you call it, diffusion or whatever it is that the paint does as far as with the dripping and all of that, and I can pause it by pressing that icon, and then when I press it again, it allows it to continue like it's doing now. You see some of the colors dripping and so forth, and but I can pause it just to put in the details and then hit it again to pause it again, or two icons over, I can just press to dry the entire canvas here, and so it'll pause any of the dripping or dispersion of the paint or whatever. But I go back and forth between hitting these icons, and in between that there's an icon to wet the entire canvas, so that it'll behave as if you wet watercolor paper, and the color itself will begin to do all that thing that it does as far as blending and dripping and so forth, and behaving like a watercolor. So I use those icons and I go back and forth as I'm laying down the color, and that kind of helps to control it a little bit. But I also want to allow for these drips to happen, so I don't want to control it too much. At the same time, I'm also using the layers, like what I did here and what I wanted to do. Well, I only have the background and the tree, and so what I'm doing now is in between the tree and the background, I'm putting in the trees that go in between it. I'm putting that part of the landscape to go to between it, and then later on I'll add another layer and allow for the foreground. And you see how the color is behaving right now, where it's spreading and so forth. And you know what, my computer is not as equipped for this as I would want it to be, and it's no fault of the program. I have a kind of an antiquated computer. I have an i5 processor. I should have an i7, and with that, it behaves a lot better. And I believe so. I believe because sometimes it slows, especially the more layers I open up, the more it slows down my computer. Also, the bigger the file, like if you at the beginning when you open it up, the bigger the file, the more it slows down your computer as well. So if like I have, like I said, an i5 processor, and I have 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is not bad. I would be happier with an i7 and about 16 gigs at least. But the program still works. It works fine. It just would work. I believe it would work more efficient if my computer were updated. And the i7 processor, when I looked at the Rebelle, the Escape Motions website, they recommended the computer have an i7 processor or higher. I believe it's i9 now or so forth. But i7 would be just perfect. But anyway, I do have what I do have, and it works. It works fine. But I think again it would work more efficient if my computer were more up to date. But without complaining, I am going to continue to paint and to use this program and enjoy it, because it does look a lot like a watercolor. I especially like that part of the middle background, the dark behind the tree right here, where you see how the color just runs into each other, especially I mean, especially exactly like what you expect a watercolor would. So in a lot of ways, it does behave like the watercolor, and it does give you that feeling of a watercolor background. And in a way, it does still look digital, um, but at the same time, it gives you more of a feeling of a watercolor than just using brushes that are basically stamps. You know, the fact that the colors behave the way that they do takes it further into giving that look. And also, while you're using it, there's that little bit of unpredictability, or a little bit where you have to give some of the control to the medium, that there's only so much that you can control yourself and allow the medium to do what it does. So that there's part of that in the way the brushes behave as well, which kind of adds to the experience, especially when you come from a background where you use traditional media like I do, and I'm used to that. And as a matter of fact, there are probably ways that a person would use, or different artists use, digital programs like this, and that probably might be more efficient than the way I do it. I don't know. All I know is that the way I use it is the way I've been used to doing things, as far as with traditional media. So like one of the things that I need to start doing more is, if you haven't noticed, on most of my videos, I do it sometimes, but I don't zoom in, because when you're working in traditional media, there is no zoom. But when you're working in digital media, you have that option. I don't do that a lot because of the way I'm used to working. And also, if you zoom in a lot of times, what happens is you spend time working on certain areas that are not really going to matter, that nobody is going to really pay attention to. I'm used to seeing the picture as a whole and focusing on the picture as a whole, rather than focusing on a little detail here and there that nobody's going to really see, or give that much attention to. So unless it's something that I really need to get in there and emphasize because it's important to the overall look of the painting, I don't spend a lot of time zooming in on the image. I'd rather see the whole thing at once, and that would be it. That would be that would be what I work on. So but yeah, it doesn't it hasn't been what you might call a big deal for me either, because like I said, this is how I'm used to working, and I've pretty much gotten the results that I wanted from this. Very few times did I ever need to do something like use the zoom. And so as I continue, one of the things is that again, just to have the look of the watercolor. Most of the time, when you look at watercolor, when you look at traditional watercolor, it's mostly about suggesting things and not really crossing every T and dotting every I. You're selective about the details and about the things that you emphasize. There's some things that you allow to let the paint, I don't know if this makes any sense, but let the paint itself make a statement. Let it look like watercolor. Let it look like the paint suggesting something rather than drawing it completely out. So that you allow to give the effect of a watercolor, allow it to be as much about the look of a watercolor as it is about the details, or less so about the details and more about the look of a watercolor. I'm suggesting the branches. I'm not trying to be so exact. I'm not trying to draw every blade of grass or so forth, or getting to a lot of detail. I'm suggesting details rather than putting them in. Like behind, like those branches that I put in, there are, you know, little suggestions of maybe some leaves or some foliage or some, but it's just like a blob of color, and it really isn't anything that's terribly detailed or so forth. So when I'm setting things up, that's what I like to do. And one of the things is also when I've done on my other paintings, like when I work digitally, is once I get down what I want as far as the painting is concerned, like for the tree or for the foreground, which I'm working now, I'll open up a layer on top of that, and I'll decrease the opacity and make changes either to the color, or I'll darken it, or something, but I'll make like subtle changes to using the opacity slider on the layer. So, and then what I do when I make those changes and I'm satisfied with those changes, I'll merge the layer, and then probably repeat it again, make more changes until I get what I want, you know. But that's how I build up a watercolor. That's how I build up anything really when I do it on these digital programs, is I build it up that way. By using the layers and changing whatever I need to change. Now there's a whole bunch of little twigs and stuff like that I wanted to get the look of an autumn, the autumn look, you know, of a tree in the fall and so forth. And I'm going to add some suggestions of leaves here and there after I get through putting on these branches and stuff. Okay, so that's you know, that's pretty much it with this. I think the painting was successful. I think it looks a lot like a watercolor. I didn't spend a lot of time researching things. I really prefer to do landscapes out in the field. I don't really prefer to do it in the studio as much. I like to be outside and paint outdoors. But you know, there's sometimes where you take what you've done and you develop paintings with it and so forth, and either working from the painting that I did outdoors, as well as whatever reference photographs that I took for it. But I kind of like having the experience of having done it, because it helps me that if I'm going to work on it, you know, at home or in the studio and so forth, I have some memory of having been there. So it gives me more of a confidence and an idea of how I want to approach this and what kind of feel I want to get for the painting. Here I'm just doing it to try out a landscape in these watercolor brushes. So I'm using reference and like I said, several photographs and as far as this is concerned, and just piecing it together as well as my imagination. Well, it's coming close to an end, so I just want to say, if this has helped, please just press like or let me know what you think about it. I'm going to return to doing the things that I normally do, which is portraits and stuff, and maybe this kind of inspired me to go outdoors and before the winter sets in, going outside and doing some watercolors as well. I definitely enjoy doing it, painting it outdoors. But also, if you want to continue to support the channel, by you can join me on my Patreon page, where you can see a lot more videos and a lot more tutorials as well, where I actually explain a lot more, slow up the video a lot more, and talk you through a painting in Rebelle, painting in Sketchbook, and explaining different methods of creating digital paintings. So that's pretty much it. I'm pretty much close to it. Like I said, it was fun doing this. I'm glad I took the time to do it. It is apart from my main interest, which is really painting portraits and so forth. But like I said, painting outdoors is really a great experience. And being able to do landscapes outdoors is a lot of fun. And it also does something to you. I remember I had an instructor that explained it, and I found that it was very true, is that when you paint outdoors for a while, and after you go through the experience and you start looking around you and you see picture possibilities in just about everywhere you look. And it's true. You get to look at the world around you and see things that way. So this is the final painting. That's it. Like I said, thank you. If you liked, join me on Patreon. There's definitely more, and I will always be back here to post more on YouTube as well. All right. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.